The body shared among witnesses. The body arrived 3 days after the bridge collapsed. Not in the sense that it was pulled from the river. 17 had been recovered by then, wrapped in plastic and tagged, but in the sense that it arrived, whole and dry, in the parking lot of St. Mercy's Hospital at 4:47 a.m., discovered by a janitor named Lewis, who had been emptying the outdoor ashtrays. The dead man wore a gray suit, no tie. His shoes were missing. There was a gash across his forehead, clean as a paper cut, but deep enough to see bone. Lewis called the police. The police called the medical examiner. The medical examiner, Dr. Patricia Accoy, stood over the body in the parking lot as the sun rose and felt something turn over in her stomach, not nausea exactly, but recognition. She had already examined this body. She had opened its chest cavity 48 hours prior, had noted the water in the lungs, the fractured ribs, the way the bridge's steel had torn through the soft tissue of the liver. She had signed the death certificate herself. The body had been claimed by a sister from Minneapolis. There had been a viewing. "This isn't possible," she said aloud, though no one was listening. The body's eyes were closed. There was dirt under the fingernails that hadn't been there before. The second appearance came during the memorial service at Riverside Park. 300 people had gathered, many holding photographs of the dead. The mayor was speaking into a microphone about infrastructure and grief, and the resilience of the community when someone screamed. The body lay on its back beneath the elm tree, dressed now in jeans and a flannel shirt. The gash on the forehead had closed, leaving only a pale scar. But there were new injuries, bruising around the throat in the pattern of hands, and a bullet wound through the left shoulder, entry and exit both. The fabric of the shirt singed black at the edges. A woman in the crowd fainted. The mayor stopped mid-sentence, his mouth open, catching flies. This time it was a reporter, Angela Chen, who got close enough to touch the body before the police arrived. She placed 2 fingers against the wrist, feeling for a pulse she knew wouldn't be there, and later told her editor that the skin was cold, but not stiff, pliant as clay. When she pulled her hand away, there was blood on her fingers, fresh blood, red and warm, though the wounds themselves were hours or days old. Impossible to say. The police cordoned off the area. Dr. Accoy was called again. She arrived with her assistant, Marcus, who took one look at the body and said, "That's him. That's definitely him." "I know," Patricia said, "but we buried him." "I know." They stood in silence, watching as 2 officers lifted the body onto a gurney. One of the officers, a young man with a wispy mustache, asked if they should take it back to the morgue. Patricia thought about this. Where else would we take it? The body did not stay in the morgue. By morning it was gone again, the drawer empty, the steel table clean. The security footage showed nothing. just the body lying still under the fluorescent lights at 11:43 p.m. And then, at 11:44 p.m., an empty room. It reappeared that afternoon in the high school gymnasium during a basketball game. This time, there were witnesses, dozens of them. The players said the body simply materialized at center court during a timeout, flat on its back, arms at its sides. The referee blew his whistle, though later he couldn't say why. The body wore a hospital gown now, pale blue and open at the back. The bullet wound had healed, leaving only a scar, but there was something new. Words carved into the skin of the chest, thin and precise, as if done with a scalpel. They read, "I remember the water. A girl named Sophie, 16 years old, daughter of one of the bridge victims, walked onto the court before anyone could stop her. She knelt beside the body. She touched the words with her fingertips, tracing each letter. 'That's not my father,' she said quietly, 'but I think he's in there.' By the end of the week, the body had appeared 7 times. Each appearance brought new wounds, new scars, new inscriptions. The community began to keep track, creating a shared document online where sightings could be reported and cataloged. Appearance 4, behind the Chinese restaurant on Polk Street. Burn marks on both palms. Words on right thigh. Where did the children go? Appearance 5, inside the public library, 3rd floor, between the stacks. Stab wound in the abdomen. Words on left forearm. The sky was the color of a bruise. Appearance 6, St. Michael's Cemetery, lying on top of Margaret Chen's grave, D. 2019. Ligature marks on wrists. Words across the back. I loved someone once who loved me back. The authorities didn't know what to do. You couldn't arrest a dead body. You couldn't stop it from moving. The mayor held a press conference and said nothing useful. The state sent investigators who took samples and ran tests and found exactly what they expected to find. A human corpse, male, approximately 45 years old, cause of death, drowning. Dental records matched. DNA matched. It was, without question, Daniel Reeves, accountant, divorced, killed when the Riverside Bridge collapsed on October 3rd. Except Daniel Reeves was also buried in Minneapolis, and his sister swore she had seen the casket lowered into the ground, had thrown dirt on top of it herself, had touched the polished wood and said goodbye. Then what is this? The investigators asked Dr. Okoye. She didn't have an answer. Angela Chen was the first journalist to interview the witnesses systematically, to collect their stories and look for patterns. She spoke to Louis, to Sophie, to the referee, to a homeless man named Carl who claimed he'd seen the body appear in an alley downtown, smoking a cigarette that wasn't really there. Did you touch it? Angela asked each of them. Most said no, some said yes. Those who touched the body reported something strange, a flash of memory that didn't belong to them. Louis saw a woman's face, someone he'd never met, laughing in a kitchen filled with yellow light. Sophie felt the sensation of cold water closing over her head, the pressure of the current pulling her down. The referee remembered, though it wasn't really remembering, the taste of his grandmother's pie, apples, and cinnamon, though his grandmother had never baked, had died before he was born. "It's like he's collecting us," Sophie told Angela. Piece by piece, Angela published the article on a Friday. By Saturday, the body had appeared in 12 new locations across the city, always bearing new wounds, always inscribed with new words. Some of the words were poetry, some were grocery lists, some were confessions. "I stole from the church collection plate when I was 9. I told her I loved her, but I didn't mean it. I knew the bridge was failing, and I said nothing." That last one appeared on the body's stomach. Carved deep, Dr. Patricia Accoy began to dream about the body. In the dreams, she was performing an autopsy, but every time she made an incision, the wound would speak. Not with a voice exactly, but with a knowing, a transmission of information directly into her mind. The body wasn't dead, the dreams told her. It was dispersed. It was everyone and no one. It was the bridge itself, the 17 victims, the 300 witnesses, the thousands who had driven across those steel beams over the years, trusting them to hold. She woke one night at 3 a.m., her husband snoring beside her, and realized she knew where the body would appear next. She drove to the river. The body lay on the muddy bank, half in and half out of the water. The wounds had multiplied now, layered on top of each other like transparencies, so many that the skin seemed more scar than flesh. The words covered every inch, names, dates, fears, regrets, moments of joy so small and ordinary they broke your heart to read them. Anna liked to sing in the shower. Michael always ordered decaf and pretended it was regular. I wanted to learn to play the piano. Patricia sat down in the mud beside the body. She didn't touch it. She didn't need to. "Who are you?" she asked. The body didn't answer, but she understood anyway. It wasn't Daniel Reeves. It had never been Daniel Reeves. It was the space where Daniel Reeves had been, the absence left behind. And into that absence, everything was falling, all the grief, all the memory, all the unbearable weight of being witnessed and forgotten. The body was the bridge. The body was the river. The body was everyone who had ever looked at the water and wondered what it would be like to let go. They stopped trying to move it after that. The body stayed by the river, and people began to visit. They brought flowers and photographs and objects that had belonged to the dead. A watch, a scarf, a child's drawing of a house with smoke coming from the chimney. They touched the body and received memories that weren't theirs. They wrote messages on scraps of paper and left them in the mud. "I'm sorry. I miss you. I don't know how to keep living." The body continued to change. New injuries appeared daily, but so did signs of healing. Scars faded. Bruises yellowed and disappeared. The inscriptions began to overlap, creating dense palimpsests of text that no one could fully read but everyone somehow understood. Sophie came every day after school. She would sit cross-legged beside the body and talk to it, telling it about her father, about the way he'd taught her to ride a bike, about the last argument they'd had, something stupid about curfew, about the fact that she'd never said she loved him before he left for work that morning. One afternoon in November, she touched the body's hand and saw not a memory but a possibility. Her father, older, gray at the temples, walking her down an aisle, both of them crying, both of them happy. It was a future that would never happen, but in that moment, it was real enough to sustain her. She squeezed the cold hand. "Thank you," she whispered. By December, the body had become a pilgrimage site. People came from other cities, other states, drawn by stories they'd read online or heard whispered in grief support groups. The city tried to regulate it, to control the crowds, but gave up. What were you supposed to do? Build a fence around a corpse that appeared and disappeared at will? Station guards beside something that existed in defiance of all natural law? Dr. Akoi visited one last time on the winter solstice. The body was covered in snow, barely visible, just a shape in the white. The wounds had finally stopped appearing. The inscriptions had faded to faint silver lines, like old stretch marks. She knelt beside it and placed her hand on its chest. She felt the cold, yes, but also something else, a warmth beneath, pulsing slow and steady, like a heartbeat that belonged to everyone. "Rest," she said softly. That night, the body disappeared for good. Not in pieces, not in stages, but all at once, as if it had finally given back everything it had collected and could now, at last, be finished. The snow where it had lain remained undisturbed, a perfect impression of a human form. By morning, that too was gone, filled in by fresh powder, leaving nothing behind but the memory of what had been witnessed. Angela Chen's final article about the body ran in January. She interviewed everyone she could find who had touched it, who had seen it, who had left something behind on the riverbank. She compiled a list of the inscriptions, as many as anyone could remember. She tried to make sense of it. In the end, she wrote, "The body was never about Daniel Reeves. It was about all of us. It was the proof that we existed, that we mattered, that someone was paying attention. In a world where bridges fall and people die, and time moves forward without mercy, the body stayed. It remembered. It held us." She submitted the article to her editor, then walked to the river. The bank was empty now, just mud and snow, and the skeletal trees standing watch. She stood where the body had been and felt nothing supernatural, nothing profound, just the cold wind off the water and the ordinary grief of living. But when she got home, she found a message carved into her bathroom mirror, written in condensation that shouldn't have been there. "You told the truth. That matters." She stood staring at it until the letters faded, evaporating back into the air, returning to wherever lost things go when they're finally ready to be lost. Sophie graduated high school in the spring. At the ceremony, giving her valedictorian speech, she talked about absence and presence, about the spaces people leave behind, and the way we fill them with stories, with memory, with love that refuses to be contained by something as small as death. She didn't mention the body directly. She didn't need to. Everyone in that auditorium knew what she was talking about. After the ceremony, walking to her car, she saw a man standing by the oak tree at the edge of the parking lot. He wore a gray suit, no tie. He was too far away to see clearly, but she knew the shape of him, recognized it the way you recognize your own face in the mirror. She raised her hand in a wave. The man raised his hand back. Then he turned and walked away, his footsteps making no sound on the pavement, his body casting no shadow in the afternoon sun. And Sophie understood that some things don't end, but only change form, dispersing into the world like light through water, belonging to everyone and no one, remembered by all. She got in her car and drove home, the graduation cap on the passenger seat beside her. And all the way there she felt it, the weight of being witnessed, the grace of being held, the impossible gift of knowing that nothing, not even death, could ever make you truly disappear.